All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. The Las Vegas Raiders offseason just continues to get better and better. Today, Matthew Stafford apparently, well, here's the news report, all right? It's from Jordan Schultz. Raiders minority owner Tom Brady recently hosted Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford at his home in Montana, where they spent time together and went skiing. Brady has been actively trying to convince Stafford to join the Raiders, and the discussions are ongoing. And this is just beautiful because, here's the big deal, right? The Raiders actually have a really talented roster. And most importantly, they have the second most cap space in the entire National Football League. They also have the 6th overall pick, and they also have the 37th overall pick. So hopefully you're getting two capable day one starters, no matter how they dice it up, right? Even if they trade back from pick number 6. Now, the Raiders truly feel like a quarterback away. Now, maybe a couple of months ago, that wouldn't necessarily be the case, but then they went out there and they hired Pete Carroll, right? And he brings in a couple of studs. They get Chip Kelly to be their offensive coordinator, who led 2 top 5 offenses for the Philadelphia Eagles the last time he was a head coach in the National Football League a couple of years ago. They re-sign Patrick Graham as their defense coordinator, who's done a phenomenal job with this team. Phenomenal job, right? And John Spytek as the GM. And now Tom Brady is the minority owner. So there's been this level of dysfunctionality within the Raiders organization for the last 20, 25, 30, maybe even years, not 30 years, 20 years. And that's completely changed. So if you don't want Matthew Stafford, well, here's the thing. People don't want Matthew Stafford, whether it's Raiders fans or whatever. I understand why if you're the New York Giants, you don't want Matt Stafford. You shouldn't want him at all. The Raiders have the 6th pick, right? What they're going to do most likely is, first off, it doesn't really appear like they're all that big on Mr. Shedeur Sanders. It doesn't really feel like that. Cam Ward is probably going 1 or 2, at the absolute worst 3. And so it feels like Spytek and the management staff over in Las Vegas, it feels like they don't want to give up the farm for Cam Ward. But they're also not enamored on the 6th pick with Shedeur Sanders. So they're probably not going to take a QB. Now, getting back to the Matthew Stafford thing, because there's people who don't want him because, first off, he's looking for like a $50 million extension. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get it, but that's what he's looking for. And draft compensation, right? Matthew Stafford is by far a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. In fact, I don't really know why he wants to leave the Los Angeles Rams, because as we saw a couple of months ago at this point, they almost beat the Philadelphia Eagles. They had the opportunity to take them down and advance, right? So I don't really know why Matt Stafford wants to leave the Rams, but apparently, it kind of feels like that's about to happen. $50 million, I wouldn't really sweat it, all right? They're still going to be aggressive in free agency, even if they sign a $50 million, $45 million quarterback. But people are worried about draft compensation because, like I said, he's a top 10 QB. Well, the thought process here is, if you need to give up a first-round pick to acquire Matt Stafford, the hopeful assumption is, first off, in like the 3rd or 4th round, drafting a guy like Jalen Milroe or even Will Howard out of Ohio State. But you're hoping next year's draft pick is not anywhere close to what it is this season, right? So I understand you don't want to necessarily give up valuable draft assets to go out there and get an aging QB. But first off, Matt Stafford's been perfectly fine even at this age. And like I said, number 2, well, hopefully that draft pick is 32nd next year. But being more realistic, the Raiders should be a playoff team with Matthew Stafford on this roster. So that draft pick is probably, pick number 22, pick number 25, pick number 28, if you're feeling it. So I get some reason for concerns, but once you dig into the data, it kind of makes perfect sense. It's short-term success. They obviously need to go out there and acquire a running back. It's probably going to happen in the draft. And I do kind of feel the combine, by the way, starts tomorrow. So I kind of even find mock drafts a little bit funny at this point, in the sense of, well, a lot of people think the Raiders are going to draft Will Johnson at pick number 6. Well, I saw today, according to Tristan Kuhn, that the Raiders will be aggressive pursuing a top free agent cornerback. So if I still have Jacorian Bennett making strides in the National Football League after his 2nd year, and they go out there and acquire a cornerback in free agency, Well, Will Johnson to the Raiders at pick number 6 isn't going to make much sense when free agency begins on March 12th if they go out there and make a trade or go out there and sign one of these guys like DJ Reed, et cetera, et cetera. So I I think it's really interesting what's going to happen. We'll get into some mock draft stuff in just a second here, but folks, welcome back to the channel. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily Raiders content. Let me know your thoughts down below. And I also do just want to say, because you can't see my face right now, but I got my man Aaron Rodgers in a Jets jersey. I got his jersey hanging from the rafters right behind me. I'm also 100,000% bringing Aaron Rodgers on board. If you're trying to not, give up $40 to $50 million on a short-term contract for, a Matthew Stafford, older QB, right? I get it. Rodgers is even older than Stafford, but my point is it wouldn't cost a first-round draft pick, and it also wouldn't cost over 40, 50, possibly millions of dollars for a season. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Every mock draft I'm reading right now has the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Will Johnson at pick number 6 out of Michigan, the cornerback. This is an article here. I'm actually going to pull it up. I believe it's from Josh Leiskowitz. He did like 10 days ago a mock draft for all 32 teams in the National Football League. And, he had Will Johnson at pick number 6. But I wanted to get a little bit deeper into it because, pick number 37 is a really big deal. And we're going to wait and see what the Raiders decide to do with some of the linebackers that are up for free agency. But he had mocked to the Raiders at pick number 37. One of my fan favorites, just because I got so much family who went to the University of South Carolina. We call it USC there. Demetrius Knight Jr. at pick number 37. This guy's an absolute stud. Over the final 10 games of the 2024 season, he just missed one tackle in run support. He also allowed a passer rating of just 61.7% in coverage, and he also generated pressure on 25% of his pass rush snaps. So I really like that mock draft, having Demetrius Knight Jr., who I think is just going to be an absolute menace at the pro football level. Day one starter, in my opinion. But once again, it is a little bit biased. And then moving a little bit deeper, just for example, he had a cornerback at pick 6, a linebacker at 37, a running back in Judkins at pick 68, and then Milroe at 73, Tez Johnson at 106. I would, once again, ideally the Raiders prioritize offense, right? Because Will Johnson would be a beast, but if Genty's available at pick number 6, they're 100,000% going to draft him, in my opinion. I think in the next 2 months, you're going to see Genty's draft stock, as it has, just continue to rise. I don't really see him falling out of the top 10, especially considering what we've seen from guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, but rookies in the first round, and Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. And then Jalen Milroe at pick number 73. I really like that in theory, either him or Will Howard. I just like, no matter if they get a Stafford, if they get an Aaron Rodgers, or even for some reason run it back with AOC, I'm 100,000% down with drafting one of those guys. And if they were to acquire Stafford, well, they're sitting behind Matthew Stafford for a couple of seasons. So things are building up for the Raiders right now. I absolutely love it. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. But guys, let me know your thoughts on Matthew Stafford, possibly to the Raiders, down below. Peace.